The Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by Pride Seeds, Preaxer Xemium Fungicide, and Cruiser Max Vibrance Beans.
Bernard Tobin here on the Soybean School. Today I'm down near London at the BASF research station, catching up with agronomist Ken Currah. Ken, how's it going?
It's going great today. We got a beautiful day and looking forward to talking about weed control.
Weed control, you know, Ken, as I say, combines are rolling. You know, we're hoping for an open fall. You know, hopefully we'll get our wish. And that really does provide, you know, some great opportunities for fall weed control.
Yeah, exactly. Here we are talking about weed control in the fall, right, during harvest. And, you know, really, where does this conversation begin? We get a lot of questions as crop protection agronomists on controlling tough weeds in the spring. So dandelion, Canada thistle, perennial south thistle, wild carrot, and we're going to even mention bluegrass today. Weeds that are really difficult to deal with in the spring. We get a lot of questions on those. This is the time of year to get at those weeds and really lay a nice foundation for a comprehensive weed control program on those target species.
Now, we've got some cover crops here of some escapes and some soybeans here. How do we tackle these two situations?
Yeah, so this discussion, you know, we can talk about it behind cereal stubble, whether there's a cover crop or not, and we can talk about it after the soybean combine leaves the field and we're dealing with soybean stubble. So really, you know, you look at this field behind us, like you mentioned, it's cover crop oats into wheat stubble. And we've got a few flea baying coming up. We've got the odd sprig of bluegrass around. We've got dandelions down in there, dandelion rosette, the odd Canada thistle hanging around in here. So, you know, when we work with our grower, what is your plan for this field on when to terminate it and then scheduling tillage and those types of activities?
What about soybean fields now? Obviously, as I mentioned, hopefully going to get through that pretty early, not too fast because we want nice grain fill, but what's our strategy there?
Yeah, so even when it comes to soybean stubble, obviously, you know, it's later in the calendar year versus having wheat stubble available to do basically today if the conditions were good. Soybean stubble, a lot of those dandelion rosettes or, you know, that plant material that we can target with herbicides, you know, with the thistle family or with wild carrot, it's available to contact with herbicides. So we have an opportunity there to get a good shot in on those weeds and get started.
What about rates? I mean, especially when it comes to glyphosate now. I mean, you know, fairly dear product, but how do we manage rates? Because we don't want to be cutting back.
So you mentioned really the first of the two herbicide groups that we want to use at this time of year, and that's the highly systemic. So group 9, glyphosate, highly systemic, translocates throughout the plant and to the roots, and that's the name of the game at this time of year, is sending herbicide along for the ride to the roots as the plant is driving photosynthetics down into its crown and its root system to overwinter and start up again next year. What's the other highly systemic family of chemistry? It's the group 4s, the dicambas, 2,4-Ds of the world, right? Again, highly systemic, translocates to the roots. Those are the herbicides we want to use at this time of year. You mentioned glyphosate rate. Mike Cowbrow has provided excellent work on these tough weed species and their response to glyphosate rate, and really the target glyphosate rate being, in a lot of cases, much higher than that standard 0.67 of a high-load 540 glyphosate. We get talking about, you know, 1.5 to 2x rate to really be effective on those weeds, because we have such a difficult root system there to deal with, whether it's the crown of a dandelion or the rhizomatic root network of perennial south thistle and Canada thistle. We've got a lot of biomass to take on there, and we need to get herbicide down into that biomass to be effective.
What about stewardship, Ken, when we're going out with weed control in the fall?
Yeah, exactly. So I mentioned group 4, right? Good stewardship means that we have some fields in sensitive crop areas that we can't target with group 4 with spring weed control programs. A lot of those sensitive crops, not all of them, but a lot of them are getting out of the way right now with harvest. And, you know, proper stewardship considerations may open up opportunities in those fields. Why is that important? In a lot of those cropping areas, we do have limited options for herbicide just because of follow cropping concerns, etc. So if that door is open, you know, we have an opportunity to get an additional mode of action, and a highly effective one at that, into those farms. But again, stewardship trumps all. Yep. So watch for those neighboring crops and apply in the right conditions. But we do have fields opening up through the harvest period in the fall where we might be able to get in there and target with group 4 plus the glyphosate. If not, we're running with straight glyphosate.
let's talk about that window, when it closes. When should we winterize the sprayer? But and with that, how late should we go? Are there opportunities late?
Yeah, there are opportunities late, and again, Mike Calbrow has some excellent data. I mentioned that, you know, these weeds right now are capturing today's sunlight here in late September. They're driving photosynthate nutrients to the roots, and we're sending the herbicide along for the ride. What's really interesting is a weed species like perennial sow thistle, for example. You can increase, according to Mike's data, you can increase control by as much as 20% by spraying after it gets nipped by the first frost. Usually the first frost has been our cue to winterize the sprayer and put it away in the shed, right? But you know, if I can get a 20% increase in control on a real problem weed that we have in a lot of Ontario's fields by waiting until after frost, great time. As always with a frost application, we kind of want to go another 48 hours frost-free to let that plant recover and its metabolism to get going so we can actually get the herbicide into it. But that first frost might provide an excellent opportunity. What I would also say to growers is, you know, these are slower modes of action too. So, you know, the response, we're used to a lot of fast-acting herbicides in the spring, but your activity in the fall is going to be a little bit slower. For growers that want to do tillage, I would suggest you wait at least 2 weeks so that that chemistry translocates to the roots and actually has activity on the weed. And even for you know, applicators, if they go out and do this weed control pass late, you may not see a lot of activity on the weed after 2 weeks visually compared to what we're used to with spring weed control in the longer days of the year. But trust me, when you come back in the spring, that weed's full of herbicide. The sun in the spring is going to kickstart that weed to try to grow, and it's going to have some difficulty.
Hey, Ken, some great insights. Always appreciate you making time for the Soybean School.
Absolutely. Happy to do it, Bern.